Hello and welcome to The Obscure, a podcast describing interesting people that deserve to be better known. We take interesting characters from history, out of obscurity and into the limelight, focusing on a different character every episode. I'm Daniel Darkens.
And I'm Nina Bickerton. We will be producing a new episode every fortnight, landing wherever you get your podcasts on a Saturday morning, if you're in the UK. Subscribe so that you don't miss each new episode.
How are you doing, Nina?
I'm doing fine, Daniel. Looking forward to today's episode. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, actually, and I have got an absolute corker of a character to tell you about today. It is actually one of my favourite people. It is a chap called Maurice Wilson.
Hey, Maurice Wilson. So if you could give me some dates and some era in history, that would be really useful.
Maurice was born, if I can say it like this, Maurice was born the day before me, except a different year. He was born on the 21st of April, 1898.
1898.
So the last years of Victoria's reign. He was born in Bradford, up in Yorkshire, in the north of England. He had a couple of older brothers and I think a younger brother as well. And his family was in the wool trade. So they were textiles. His father managed and I think owned a textile factory. The way that it would have worked around that time is that the kids would have gone into the family business. Maurice would have been expected to eventually end up as one of the managers of this textile factory. But by the time he got to be 16, the First World War broke out, and that threw all of everyone's plans into disarray. You couldn't sign up at 16. You could only sign up for the army at 18, and the day after his 18th birthday, which was in 1916, in actual fact, he signed up for the army 50 years to the day before I was born.
It's all about you, isn't it, Daniel?
It's all about me, absolutely.
So how
So
did
he
his
signed
brothers
up.
go as well?
His elder brother signed up. I think both of his elder brothers signed up. I'm not so sure about his younger brother.
Right. No, he would have been
But
too young.
Yes, he was probably too. Yeah, he probably didn't even reach his 18th birthday until the First World War had ended. Good point. Yeah. But yeah, at 18, Maurice ended up travelling over to France to fight in northern France and in Flanders fields. And he did it with distinction. He won a medal. He won the Military Cross, which is quite a high award.
Yeah.
And he was actually promoted to captain, which outside of massive conflict like the First World War just doesn't happen. He was a commoner. To be an officer, to be a captain, you basically these days you have to go to Sandhurst, and you only go to Sandhurst if you've been to the right public schools before that. So the normal thing would you go from the playing fields of Eton to the military college at Sandhurst, and then you come out having been trained in how to be an officer.
Was that literally the only way then? Because what you talked about before with him being part of a family who owned what sounds like a substantial business, was that not a sort of standing within the community that would have allowed him to be? No, nothing?
No.
So it literally was public school, then Sandhurst, then officer material. Right. Okay.
Yes. We used to have at least one other officer training college. There was one at Woolwich, but it was the right stock going to the officer training college and then coming out as officers. So anybody that, when we watch Blackadder Goes Forth, the Hugh Laurie character, he would have gone to Sandhurst.
Got you.
And General Melchett would have gone to Sandhurst or to Woolwich, however many years before that. So he had quite a good First World War in that sense, apart from the fact he was quite badly injured, and he spent quite a lot of the time that the conflict, the last couple of years of the conflict, basically convalescing from injuries that he'd had. And it
Right.
affected, he had a bad arm for the rest of his days. Once the war was over, though, he did struggle a bit, as a lot of kids did. He, having seen the horrors that he'd seen, to actually go back to the normal working life of working in a factory, working your way up, being surrounded by people that knew nothing of what you'd experienced,
Mm,
living in a street where half a dozen of your neighbours are buried in Belgium, it was very
mm.
difficult for him. His mum decided that him and his brothers all needed to get married off, and that would sort them out. So he actually got married when he was 24. He married somebody called Beatrice Slater. Seems like that didn't really work out that well
Oh, that's
because,
sad.
well, about 18 months later, he emigrated to New Zealand
On his own.
without. He went with his younger brother. I think it suited Maurice more than it suited Beatrice,
Fine.
because eventually,
Okay.
once he'd got out there, when he first went out to New Zealand, he was a kitchen scales salesman. Those are the
Okay.
days when that was a proper job.
I was gonna say, door to door,
um,
kitchen scales.
yeah, in New Zealand, for goodness sake, that would take
Yeah.
you'd
A lot of
you'd have to
travelling.
be fairly yeah, quite a lot of travelling involved, I should imagine. Yeah. Um, But after a while, I think after about 6 months, he did send out for her. So she sailed over, and bear in mind, there's no sort of 24-hour journey to New Zealand. That would have been about a
No,
3-week sea voyage.
at least, I would
So
imagine.
she sailed out to be with her husband. Unfortunately, her husband was seeing somebody else by that time. So as soon as she
I
got
should have
there, she
timed that
basically
better.
filed for divorce.
She it's a bit odd, isn't it? You send for your wife, but you're still having an affair.
You are having an affair with somebody that you end up marrying. Yes.
Oh, well,
So as soon
happy
as
ending for him, literally, probably, so that's good.
I have to say, with this one and with a lot of the interesting chaps I'm going to be talking to you about over the weeks, there's no happy ending.
Oh, oh dear. Oh,
Hopefully, Beatrice ended up with a happy ending. I'm not quite sure. I think she did end up having a child with a second husband, so
okay.
she might have had a happy ending.
Mm.
But the person he was seeing was somebody called Mary Garden, who was actually a really successful dress designer, dressmaker, or as
Oh,
she
okay.
called herself, she was a modiste.
Oh, a modiste. Ooh,
So because of his family background in the linen trade, he would have had knowledge of the fabrics that she was working with. So she'd have done the designing. He'd have been able to at least have some input into the actual making of
yeah,
the stuff of her creations. And they ended up getting married.
okay.
And she was successful, which means that her business was minted. So
Okay.
suddenly he was now quite well to do himself. So they lived in a really
Ah,
swanky part of town. He now had a little bit of cash on the hip. But Mary Garden didn't just want to be a successful New Zealand designer, she wanted to be a successful worldwide designer. So she ended up travelling over to the States on her
oh,
own.
crikey.
But Morris followed on a few weeks afterwards.
What year are we
But
in
funny
now?
enough, never quite caught up with her.
Odd.
So by the time he got to America, she'd moved on to the next hop on her journey. And I think Morris thought, blow this for a game of soldiers.
I think there's a
Um,
lack in communication with this gentleman, isn't there? It's like,
I
especially
think
with
there's
wives.
a lack of communication with wives in particular, but
Yes.
maybe with absolutely everyone.
Right.
So he decided, I've travelled all the way to America, I'm pretty much halfway home. So he then travelled through Canada and then sailed from Canada back to Liverpool. So after only, I think,
Mm,
18 months, something like that, he was back in England. Went to see his dear old
mm.
mum, but he had itchy feet, didn't really settle back into Bradford, moved down to London. didn't really find his feet in London, so he sailed off to South Africa,
Was there
spent
any
a few
intent?
months.
Was there any intent in him going to South Africa? Was there a reason, or did he just say, "I'm going"?
I th I think it was just wanderlust. I think he
Oh,
just
okay.
wasn't satisfied with being in
Back.
England,
Yeah,
perhaps too many war memories, so it was just be as far away from the whole of this. I think it's very difficult where we are over 100 years afterwards
yeah.
to know the trauma that the First World War
Oh,
represented. We've
horrific.
seen, yeah, we've seen conflict on the TV, we've seen First World War films, and I don't think they give us any indication
No,
as to what it would have actually felt like to have seen the slaughter that
absolutely.
happened in
They
those
well, they
times.
they
So,
basically had PTSD, you know, and
yes,
PTSD has only been recognised in the past, I don't know, couple of 3 decades at the most, you know,
and
so
unfortunately,
horrific.
I think you're absolutely right, and not only has it only been recognised fairly recently, a lot of I think a lot of First World War soldiers that suffered with PTSD were shot for cowardice.
Yeah, I think that's
So it
probably
wasn't just an undiagnosed psychological illness, it was something that a lot of people were actually
oh,
dispatched for,
we
which
can't
is
imagine it. We cannot imagine. The
no, no,
cruelty from
quite.
our own side would have been immense, you know.
So he went to South Africa, didn't stay there for long, may have found a new girlfriend on the way because he's had 2 biographies. All of the information I know about him is from these 2 biographies that were
Okay.
written about him. One of his biographers was written by an investigative journalist who clearly couldn't help himself because he went through the manifests of the ship out to Durban
Oh,
in South
right.
Africa and the manifest on the way back. And there was a lady that was sailed on the same ship as him out and the same ship from a different place back.
Oh,
So he's conjectured that maybe he found somebody else to accompany him
a
on
lady in
that
every
journey as
port.
well. Absolutely. Yes. But unfortunately, on the way back from South Africa, he contracted TB. So
Ooh,
he had tuberculosis, which obviously is not very good for you.
no.
But of course, if you suffer from tuberculosis on a long ship's voyage, what's the first thing you do when you get back to England? You head off to Mayfair to visit a guru. And that
Really?
guru, yes, absolutely. Yeah, there was no national health in those days, but if there had been, I'm sure
No?
it would have been on the NHS anyway.
Right, okay.
So he visited this guru in Mayfair, and Mayfair was just as posh in the 1920s as it is today. So
Yeah,
it seems really weird to me. But
odd.
basically, this guru prescribed him fasting, prayer, and meditation.
Good
And when I
wholesome
say
stuff.
fasting, he apparently fasted for 35 days,
But what is this
which
like
is,
no food but just water?
I I think that's the way that it goes. I think that
Whoa.
is what we're talking about here, is fasting for more than a month, so just living on water and nothing else.
That's pretty
When I say
horrific.
nothing else, of course, there was the prayer and the meditation.
Oh,
Um,
that would have done a whole lot of
but
good.
at the end of that, he decided he was absolutely cured.
Okay.
And he thought people need to know that fasting, prayer, and meditation can cure anything.
Oh, no.
But I don't have the internet. I don't have social media. I need a really grand gesture that will allow everyone to find out about this miracle.
Can I guess?
What can I do? And what would any sensible person do? They would think, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be the first person to climb Mount Everest.
What, and sing from the hills?
Absolutely, I will shout it from the hilltops. Um,
Hear me
and
now.
I'm gonna go there from I'm gonna go there from my flat in North London, and how am I gonna get there? I'm gonna fly to from North London to the lower slopes of Everest. I'm gonna crash land somewhere relatively flat, and then I'm gonna climb up the rest of the way on
Yeah,
my own.
yeah. You see, this is
All
all
I need
sensible.
I think this is all perfectly sensible, and he only needed a few things to help him do this. The first thing was he needed a plane. The second thing was he needed to learn to fly it.
Ah, yes.
The third thing was he kind of needed some climbing gear.
Useful?
And the fourth thing, which he kind of decided I don't need this, is any sort of climbing experience or ability. So he didn't know how to climb mountains. He didn't know how to fly. What was he going to do? He was going to fly most of the way around the world and climb the highest mountain in the
I think
world.
that's what you call optimistic.
Optimistic is possibly the kindest way it's
Yeah.
ever been described. Yes.
I'm not gonna say
Now,
what I really think because 'cause we're not allowed to on this channel, so
absolutely, absolutely. We don't want to be demonetized on our very first episode.
damn, that was 2.5p I could have really done with, Dan.
Exactly, exactly. So when he was aiming to set off, this was 1932. The first attempt to climb Everest had only been made properly 8 years earlier. There'd been an attempt in 1922, but that was aborted relatively early. 1924 was the famous Mallory and Irvine expedition.
Okay.
It made the news within the last year or so because we found Irvine, the one of the
Oh, I
two
heard
climbers.
about
We
that.
found Mallory's body a long time ago, but we'd
Yeah.
never found any evidence of Irvine until within the last year or 18 months.
It's
Um,
not one of those horrific stories where you hear about climbers who go up at Everest who literally climb over bodies to get to the top, is it? Or did
um,
they have to dig deep?
oh, no, he was found, unfortunately, when I say he was found, they found his boot with a foot in it.
And that was it.
But because his mum had brought him up right, the sock that his foot was in did have his initials in it, so we knew it was
Oh,
him.
that's quite heartbreaking.
It is absolutely heartbreaking. I think there has been a proper funeral given for, if I can call it the remains, for that booted foot. Um,
Oh,
but yeah, I mean, it is a fact that there are many bodies that are above a recoverable altitude. So there are
uh,
dead bodies kind of
okay.
not, I think, scattered asunder
Well,
over
I
the
think there's a
mountain, but there
few.
are a few of them.
Yeah, I think there's a few.
There are a few,
So what
yeah.
year was that they tried to climb? If he was
They
trying
tried in
Everest.
1924,
Oh, so quite the 8 years before.
so 8 years prior to where we're talking right
Right.
now. The next, expedition that was planned was 1933. So in actual fact,
Gosh.
Maurice Wilson was in competition. There was another expedition headed up by somebody called, I think it was Hugh Rutledge. Certainly his
Right.
surname was Rutledge. I think it was Hugh Rutledge.
Right.
Had an expedition planned for 1933. So the clock was ticking
Yeah,
for
yeah.
Maurice. He wasn't put off at all, though, because he said, well, if a huge, great bunch of blokes can do it, that's nothing like as difficult as just me doing it all on my own. So even if they're first, I'll be the first one to do it on my own.
Absolute breeze.
Absolutely. Now, many people will have heard of the Mallory and Irvine unsuccessful expedition. Most people will have heard of Edmund Hillary
Yeah.
and Sherpa Tenzing
Mhm.
and their successful 1953
Coronation
attempt.
year.
Indeed, it was
Yeah.
coronation year, yes.
Was this before
In
you
fact,
were
I
born,
think it was
Daniel, or
right
after
around the
you?
time of her coronation. It was just a few days before the Queen was crowned, I think, that they
I
succeeded. It was literally the same week.
I genuinely thought you were gonna say it was a few days before I was born. So
Oh, no.
I know it was a few years later that you were born. It was just me.
Yes.
Daniel the
No,
narcissist.
it doesn't. I can't tie this one into any of my significant dates at all, I'm afraid. I'll try, but but I can't. But basically, as a spoiler alert, how successful is this attempt going to be? But bear
Well,
in mind, he hasn't left North London yet. This is still the planning stage.
okay.
But there was another expedition planned. Now, the reason there was going to be 9 years between these official expeditions is because there's a lot of organising.
Right.
You can't just go to Everest, as particularly as this huge official party from England, to fly over to India and then go north from India into Tibet or Nepal, depending on
Mm.
which angle you're coming from, and say, right, we're going up this mountain that is really, really important to all of you guys. There's a lot of diplomacy involved.
Yeah,
There was
yeah,
an
that's the
awful lot
point.
of dealing with governments, getting permissions, getting official authorization. It's
I
hard work.
hadn't thought of all that part of it. I mean, obviously with things like, permission to be there, but then, of course, it's
Mm,
such a holy area, isn't it? And such a
yes.
spiritual area that especially even then, well, where are we? We're 32, 33. So
Mm,
that's nearly 100 years ago, for goodness sake. So it'd been even more special, wouldn't it?
yes,
That I
absolutely.
did not
And
even think
certainly,
about. Yeah.
yeah, and nobody in that region calls it Mount Everest, for example. They call it variations on, and apologies for the pronunciation, but they call it variations on Chomolungma, which
Oh,
has
okay.
is a kind of a spirit name for the mountain. I
So a
forget
bit,
what the
um,
translation is, but it's something like spirit in the clouds kind of
right, a bit
thing.
like, Ayers Rock and Uluru.
Yes, very
Yeah,
much so.
right.
Yes.
Get it.
Yes, it was called Uluru for long before it was called
Yeah,
Ayers Rock, but
yeah.
we called it Ayers Rock,
So
therefore
that's
that's
all
its
right
name
then.
kind of thing. Exactly, exactly. And it's slight funny aside, but from what I understand, the reason it's called Mount Everest is because the survey that was done that mapped a lot of the Himalayan mountains was a survey undertaken by somebody called George Everest,
Oh,
and
really?
he pronounced his name Everest. So we shouldn't even be calling it Everest, even if
Wow.
we uh,
That's
so
fascinating.
we
I
should
never knew that.
probably call it Chomolungma, but Everest is absolutely the wrong
It's
name
even worse.
because
Yeah.
absolutely.
God.
Mispronouncing a name from a foreign language is bad enough, but
Yeah.
mispronouncing the name of somebody who's still alive is even worse, isn't
We're
it?
a bit shit really, aren't we?
We're not very good at this sort of thing, are we? So anyway, what did Morris do? He went out and bought an aeroplane.
As you do.
He bought a yes, absolutely. And yeah, again, flying wasn't really a big thing. Yeah,
No.
prior to the First World War, flying was something that didn't really happen all that much. I
No.
think it was 1919 was the first time, was it? I think that we had the flight across the Atlantic.
Right. Yeah.
So
And then
we'd had some fairly long distance flying had happened within but only within the last dozen years.
so we're still very much in the early era of flight per se, aren't we? And the
Oh,
modern era.
absolutely.
Mm.
These things are made out of wood and canvas to keep them light enough to be able to fly. No pressurized cockpits, no flying at 30,000 feet or any of that nonsense.
Ugh.
You would be, yeah, when you go quite high up, you're getting quite cold kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah, but
it's
it's just
still the very early
scary.
days of aviation.
It's purely scary, and to undertake that when you have
Yep,
no idea of how to fly, it's like getting in a car,
absolutely.
like a really crap car, and going on Paris's Peripherique. I mean, you just
Yes,
wouldn't do it.
yeah. Well,
Madness.
he did take flying lessons,
Oh, that's all
but
right then.
yes, but apparently he was a pretty poor student, and he took about twice as long.
Of course he was.
So he did pass his test, and he did join. I think he joined the Royal Flying Club, but his flying instructor said he was a rubbish pilot, and he was really clumsy. But
No.
part of the reason
God.
he was clumsy was that a lot of the flying you do is with your feet. So the
Oh,
steering is to a
yes, of
certain extent
course.
done with your feet. And he insisted on wearing blooming great hobnail boots. So
Well, to be
so
fair,
they were
kind of ready for climbing Everest. Maybe he was practicing.
eh, kinda. It's
I'll
only
wear
what he
the
had
same
in mind,
shoes as I do when I'm going to fly to Everest. Maybe that was
Yes,
maybe that was the
absolutely.
thought behind it.
Indeed,
Oh,
indeed. Yes, I'm not gonna be taking a change of shoes, am I? So, I might as well take what I'm
that's
go
a
wear what
knocker.
I'm gonna climb in. So eventually he learned how to fly, but he wasn't very good. He had a couple of crash landings. Just before he was gonna fly off to India, he had a crash landing that put him back about 6 weeks or so to get the repairs done. So he clearly wasn't a very good pilot. But
No.
then when he flew off to India, his plane had a range of around about 300 miles or 500 kilometers
How is he gonna do that then?
because that's all planes had. You didn't
Yeah,
have long distance jumbo jets or anything
no.
like that. You'd have to do it in hops. So he did it in a series of 200 odd mile hops. So he started off by going over to Germany,
Right.
then flew down through France, down through Italy, across from Italy to the top of North Africa across to Cairo, Cairo into Iraq, back when it
Y
was safer to be in
I was
Iraq,
gonna say, yeah.
and then across from Iraq um, through Bahrain, and then to India, and eventually he got close to Darjeeling on the very northeastern side
Okay.
of India. So it was a bunch of hops that took many weeks.
Yeah.
But before he'd even set off, because he'd done a little bit of publicity about this, the powers that be said, "We can't have this. It's going to
Oh.
look terrible. If we have a disaster, it's going to reflect badly on England.
Oh.
But if we have a success, it's going to reflect badly on the powers that be because some amateurs beat us to
Ah,
it. So basically, we can't have him doing this."
good
So they
point.
gave him no permission to fly or to use any authorized aerodromes.
What with
So
from
you're not allowed to go.
where was that?
So
They in England,
so
they
they
wouldn't
couldn't control him in Europe because
right.
Germany was Germany, France was France. You can do what you like. Italy was
Sure.
Italy. You can do what you like. But when he got to Libya, Libya
Ah,
was English control.
it was English, yeah, of course.
So it's so when he got to Libya, he was arrested.
Ah,
The police that arrested him thought, "Do you know what? We're not we're not playing along with this. Off you go, yeah, and Godspeed to you," kind of thing. Um, so he was arrested but not held. But nobody was allowed to sell him petrol anywhere that the English controlled. So the whole of that North African run,
wow.
nobody was allowed to sell him petrol. So what he used to do was he would steal it when nobody was looking and then leave the money under the drum because he hated the idea of stealing.
Oh, that's good of him.
So you'd nick it and then leave an appropriate amount of money.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's so clever.
And eventually he got to, but he was told when he got to Cairo, he was told to turn back. And
Was
he
Cairo ours as
wanted to
well at
go.
that point?
Yes, Cairo was
I
very much
thought
under
so.
English control at that
Yeah,
point.
my
Yeah,
grandmother
yeah.
was out there when in literally in that era.
Mm.
So Cairo, we know that he nicked fuel,
Absolutely. So from
yeah.
Cairo, his intention was to go up through what is now Iran what was Persia at the time,
Right.
but he was absolutely, it's like the moment you touch down in Persia, we're going to impound your plane, imprison you, you're in big trouble. So
Wow.
instead, he went through Bethlehem, Jerusalem, and across to Iraq,
Wow.
and then down from Iraq down to probably quite close to the topical Straits of Hormuz, and managed to get across as far as Bahrain.
Goodness
From
me.
Bahrain, the next place that he could get that didn't involve him getting in a lot of trouble would have been an airfield called Gwadar, which is
Right.
currently in Pakistan, but at the time was part of India. This is long before the partitioning of Pakistan and India.
Right.
Trouble with Gwadar was that it was about 320 miles or more than 500 kilometers away, about 20 miles further than a tank of petrol would get you. And apparently, when he got there, he was absolutely on fumes. It was the
Oh my
last
God.
sputterings as he found his way
Wow.
into the airfield. Now, he has negotiated his way halfway round the world with no navigator, no
No,
navigation skills, and
absolutely.
apparently, and I'm just relying on one of the two biographies here, all he had to guide him was a children's atlas.
Oh my
So
God.
but again, if you're flying at 120 miles an hour, trying to keep, you're not going to be reading the atlas as you go anyway, are you?
Surely
So
you're just gonna be
how on
looking at your
earth?
compass and go, "Well, I can get that far in that distance and that time, so I'll just keep
Absolutely.
going." I
Yeah.
tell you what,
And
the ne
hope that I recognise the airfield when I see it.
yeah, 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 and if I fly over it, I'll just have to fly back. But, this smacks of, somebody who is utterly, utterly insane, but by
Yes, it does,
God,
doesn't it?
but what a brave man.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
In
carry on, I
fact,
wanna hear the rest.
when I was preparing this, I was in admiration for
Yeah.
him, and I still very much am, but
Yeah.
actually saying it out loud, the guy had a complete screw loose.
Ah.
This is almost a definition of insanity.
It would
How
have
on
been
earth?
sectioned, which is the next
Yes.
episode. We'll discuss that another time, but
Yes, absolutely. So eventually he got his way to the northeast of India. So basically, about one step away from flying to the slopes of Everest and crash landing to climb the rest. But the authorities basically caught up with him close to Darjeeling and they did impound his plane. And
oh,
they said,
no.
that's it. He's 300 miles from Everest. We're taking your plane, but to add insult to injury, we are going to have security guard your plane.
Oh,
And guess who's paying for the security, Maurice?
you are, Maurice.
You are.
Oh, oh, that's not good, is it? You'd be a bit
So that's
peeved.
going to sting a bit, isn't it? But he wasn't put off, and he spent his time kicking his heels in Darjeeling, thinking, I don't know what happens next. But he basically missed the climbing window for that year because it's very
Oh, wow.
narrow when you can climb Everest. You cannot
Okay.
climb it in the winter. Yeah,
No,
he's completely crazy, but not
not
crazy
that
enough to
crazy.
do that.
Mm.
Um, bearing in mind that when it's a bit windy where you or I are, the
Mm.
wind's blowing at sort of 30 miles an hour, isn't it?
Yeah,
When it's a
yeah.
bit windy towards the top of Mount Everest, the wind's blowing at
Oh,
150 miles an hour. It
yeah.
is just, and you could not see anything because it's going to be blowing snow around the place. You would not be able to tell what was land, what was sky, what was up, what was down, assuming you could cling on firm
Yeah,
enough
yeah,
anyway.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a very narrow window of climbing that you can do. I think it runs from around about March to June or July, because once you get
And
into
that's it.
the monsoon season, then it's off for a year. And that's why in the 21st century, there are relatively small numbers of people that climb Everest each year, but because they have to do it in such a compressed amount of time, that's
Uh,
why there's a queue to get to the top.
is there actually a queue? Literally.
From what I gather,
So
there
when I
is a
climbed,
queue.
when I climbed Snowdon about 10 years ago with Lenny and some other parents and friends, there was actually a queue. And it was
Really?
horrible, it was awful because it kind of just took the whole thing away. 'Cause I mean, I remember climbing it when I was about 12 or 13 with the school trip, and we were the only ones there,
Mhm.
and it was fantastic, it was beautiful, it was barren of people. So,
And that's the way it should be at the top
I
of a really yeah, the
important,
highest place
beautiful, and
in
yeah, yeah.
it
Oh,
it
that's
should
sad.
feel it should feel remote. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, there wouldn't have been a queue in his time, let's put it that way.
No,
Nobody had
true.
been there for 9 years anyway. Um, but basically, all of his plans were scuppered.
Oh,
So he decided that what he would do instead is walk from Darjeeling to Everest, to the base of Everest, and then climb it in the traditional sense.
so you can live at the base,
But
can
he
you? Alright, you can sort of exist quite happily at the base of Everest.
there's actually a monastery, and it's still there now. There's a
Oh, right, that's where it
monastery
is.
at the
Okay,
base of a glacier, so there are people living at
right.
that height, and that was what he was gonna use as his kicking off point, was
Okay,
this monastery, a monastery called the Rongbuk
okay.
Monastery. And again, apologies to anybody that knows how that should be pronounced.
I'm
It's
sure that's fine, Bob.
Rongbuk. So, I'm
I'm
gonna
sure
call it
that's
Rongbuk, and if that's
perfect.
wrong, then that's I apologize for that.
Rumbuk.
Um, but how do you get from Darjeeling to Rongbuk? I think you and I have exactly as much knowledge of that as Maurice did,
Yeah,
which
probably.
is not very much.
No.
Um, all we would know is by looking at a map, it's about 300 miles, and it's a different country.
Oh
So
god, yeah.
again, he wouldn't have been allowed to just walk in. Yeah, we still had
No.
passport control, we had border control, we had English people were welcome in these countries, but not these countries. There were there were ententes between certain countries, and he couldn't just walk into Nepal.
Mm.
So he befriended 3 Sherpas, and they said, "What we'll do is we'll show you the way to get to the Rongbuk Monastery, and if you really insist, you can then climb it from there, but we'll be your guides to the base of Everest." And there was only one slight issue that he might have faced. This was a Bradford lad, and I think he'd been quite good with languages when he was a schoolboy, so he could speak French and German.
Okay.
Not a lot of Nepalese, though.
No, tricky one that.
So
Mm.
his English wouldn't have been welcomed in Nepal. He was a wanted man, so he would have been
Yes.
arrested for trying to cross the border anyway. So he disguised himself as a deaf mute monk. And that would be the explanation for why he didn't talk to anybody or why he didn't understand anything they said,
Oh,
was because
I'm
he
gonna
couldn't
try
hear
that
them and he
one.
couldn't talk.
That's
But
brilliant.
even that might not have worked that well. So what he would do is he would walk at night and then hide up during the day. And he must have
Wow.
paid the, guides fairly well because they were well up for this, and I think they had a bit of a spirit of adventure about them as well. So
Cool.
the 4 of them walked the 300 miles to this Rongbuk Monastery, and
Gee.
that's where he then attempted the climb from there. And he found it was harder than he had done some climbing in the hills of North Wales. So he's probably done Snowdon the same as yourself. But there is a difference between Mount Snowdon and Mount Everest.
Yeah, just a bit.
Not not many glaciers on, Snowdon, and no, um, mountain railway on
No,
Everest.
no,
It's
absolutely
obviously
not.
you've always got the option of getting the train to the top at Snowdon. You don't have that option in Everest,
Oh, good
and if
God.
you did have, you certainly didn't have in 1933, or I
Exactly.
think we might have now been in 1934
That's
by the
probably
time
about right
we
with
got
the
there.
yeah.
Yes, so it was 1934 that he actually set off from Rongbuk Monastery. Oh, and I didn't mention, I should have said earlier on that his supplies, so he got ropes and he got a stout jacket and stuff, because he'd went shopping with a friend of his called
Shop.
Enid. So all all of his shopping for the supplies that were needed was done at Fortnum& and Mason, which which for
That's
those people
hilarious.
that are listening in that have heard of Fortnum& and Mason, that's hilarious. For anybody listening in from
Look it up.
America or mainland Europe, look
Look it
it
up.
up. It's
Yeah.
not a mountain supplies shop. It's a very fancy grocer's. Um,
Oh,
so that's where he'd got things like his sleeping bag, his coat, his stout trousers, and so on. So, yes, that was all from
that's
Fortnum's.
brilliant.
So he'd set off and found that it was actually really difficult. And the first attempt, it affected him so badly. When he got back, he was
Oh,
snow blind. He was absolutely exhausted. Because keep in mind, through all of this, to keep him strong and keep him going, he was fasting a lot of the time as well. So he'd have been in quite a weakened
oh my
state.
God.
And when he came back to the monastery after his first attempt, it took him 18 days before he was well enough to actually set off again. And the guides said, look, this is a really daft idea. How about if we come part of the way with you and then you do the last push on your own? Because they'd grown quite fond of him. He was clear from all of his letters and his diary. He was very fond of them. And I think they'd got quite fond of him as well. So they didn't want to see him perish.
Yeah.
And so they then made their way up to the camps that had been set up on the Mallory and Irving expedition. But he then said, right, that's it. I'm going to do the last bit on my own. See you later, guys. Wait here for me for, I think, something like 5 or 6 days.
Wow.
And if I'm not back, go back and wait for me back at the monastery. He was still filling in his diary, and most of what we know about this trip is from his diaries, which are still held by the Alpine Club in London. So he's got entries all the way through. And it's really funny that with that first attempt where he was so poorly afterwards that he couldn't do anything for 18 days, he didn't put it down to his complete unpreparedness. He didn't put it down to his complete incompetence or anything else. It was the weather. It was the weather that's beaten me, but if I get a decent run of weather, I'm still getting to the top. I'll be absolutely fine.
Oh my God.
This had all taken him through to the end of May of 1934, and his diary is all still positive. And on the 31st of May 1934, he writes in his diary, off again, gorgeous day.
Oh,
And that's the last we've ever
oh,
heard of him.
that's
So
that's quite tragic, actually.
it is absolutely, it's
Was his body
so,
ever
so
found?
sad. I am afraid to say his body has been found a number of times
Oh, so not
because
long.
he's thought to have fallen either very close to a glacier or into the glacier. And because glaciers are very dynamic,
Yeah.
every now and then he's there on the surface. So every now and then he's found, but he's very, very high up the mountain. He's not that far off the top, far enough that there's no question that he ever got to the top. He didn't, but he's a long way up. So he's not in a recoverable position. But when people do find him, what they do is they basically bury him, if you like. They find a
Okay.
crevasse, um, say some words, and put him back into the mountain that's seen him off. But again, because of the dynamic nature of things,
Yeah.
he does turn up from time to
Could
time,
could
at
could it be
least 2
said
or 3 times.
could it be said that he is where he wants to be or where he should be in terms of
I think
being at
so.
rest?
I think he was never, ever going to go home and say, "Well, I gave it my best shot." He was gonna
Yeah.
succeed or die in the
Yeah, die
attempt.
trying.
And I
Yeah,
think he had no fear, and maybe this goes back to the First World War stuff. He had no fear of dying. He wasn't
that's a good
scared. He
point.
didn't want to die, but he had
No,
no fear of it. Um, so I think that may have given him a completely ridiculously over high level of self-confidence.
yeah.
Um,
I think I
I
think
think he was still convinced that he was gonna get there even
I
when
think you're right.
all of the
Mm.
evidence said it wasn't gonna happen.
Yeah. But sometimes that actually pushes people on more. It's like, "No, I am
Yes,
gonna do it. I'm gonna beat everything." I think that
absolutely.
that story of Maurice is highly entertaining, but highly tragic as well. And
Mm.
if you could describe him in one short sentence, how would you describe him, Daniel?
I think it's really difficult to put somebody
Mm,
as complex as that into one sentence.
okay.
I think you have to try because,
Yeah.
um, yeah, what would you put on his gravestone, if you like?
Indeed,
How
that's a
would you
good way
want
of
him
putting
to
it.
I think he had a wonderful positivity, but
Mm,
completely misplaced positivity. I
mm,
think right the way from trusting this Mayfair guru, right the way through
absolutely.
to thinking he could climb to I think he had a misplaced but admirable positivity.
I think that sounds very apt, actually, and, quite empathetic as well. Perhaps now is the time to, introduce the person who I would like to speak about next time for our
Oh,
next
please do,
episode.
yes.
Her name is Nellie Bly, and I'm just gonna give you 3 phrases to, hopefully elicit some listeners or watchers. She was a journalist, but she was,
Mhm.
also a fake mental hospital inmate, and she was also a an incredible traveller. So I'm really hoping that people will come in next week
Mm.
and hear the story of Nellie Bly.